What happens when a late-night host gets silenced and then fights back? This week, Jimmy Kimmel's show was pulled off the air by ABC. Public pressure, streaming cancellations, industry backlash, and then a dramatic U-turn. Did you know that his suspension became a battle for free speech, FCC power, and corporate control? Stay tuned. This is more than just a TV scandal. This could be a precedent for media in America. Briefly introduce Jimmy Kimmel, a longtime late-night host known for satire, politics, and frequently targeting powerful figures. Explain what happened. In the aftermath of conservative activist Charlie Kirk's assassination, Kimmel made some remarks criticizing how the narrative was being framed, accusing Trump supporters of trying to shift blame. ABC, owned by Disney, responded by suspending Jimmy Kimmel Live, pending further internal review. As pressure mounted from conservative circles and the FCC detailed the remarks. Kimmel said that some were trying to portray Kirk as killer, as anything other than one of them, and accused critics of trying to score political points from the tragedy. The reaction from conservatives: outrage, calls for investigations, warnings from the FCC about potential broadcast license risks. Also, the pressure from viewers and the public protests, cancellations of Disney Plus subscriptions, strong criticism from both sides. Disney found itself squeezed between regulatory threats and consumer backlash. Describe how the suspension came under heavy fire, including from people across the political spectrum. Conservatives, liberals, free speech advocates joined in. Disney executives, including CEO Bob Iger and entertainment chief Dana Walden, were in negotiations with Kimmel's team to find a way for his return. Sources say the intent was to do what's best for the company, but also, as reported, that Kimmel would have few constraints on his return. On Tuesday, relative to the news dates, ABC announced that Jimmy Kimmel Live would return to air. Disney admitted that Kimmel's comments were ill-timed and insensitive, but stopped short of a full apology. The suspension was described as a response to avoid inflaming a tense moment. Highlight that this kind of suspension plus reinstatement is rare. It's an outlier scenario. A major network pulling its own show amid regulation threats and public backlash. Then reversing course. Cue outlier rule. What is the outlier rule? Describe briefly when an unexpected event, an outlier, happens, something unusually risky. Rare for a network, it reveals bigger trends. Those rare events often become case studies for what's possible and signal shifts in power, policy, public norms. Apply it here. Kimmel's suspension is an outlier. Major network forced to take down content because of political regulatory threats. The reversal is also an outlier. Public and consumer pressure forced a multinational media company to backtrack. Why this matters: sets a precedent. If networks can be pressured into removing content, then pressure becomes a tool of censorship or self-censorship. If they can be pressured to reverse, that empowers activism, but also encourages threats. Free speech versus regulatory power. Is the FCC's threat of license revocation or fines a legal check or a form of chilling speech? What does regulatory overreach look like? Corporate media risk and business considerations. Disney's role: balancing profit, legal risk, public relations. Pulling the plug on a high-profile host is risky, but letting regulatory threats loom and letting subscription cancellations mount are costly too. Political polarization and media culture wars. This incident fits into a broader trend. Media, especially late-night and commentary formats, becoming front lines of culture war battles. People on opposite sides see it as proof of something bigger: suppression, bias, or abuse of power. Precedent for future cases. Will this make hosts more careful or more bold? Will networks start to preemptively cut quips, punches to avoid regulatory backlash? Will viewers expect media companies to defend their talent? Will there be regulatory action? Will the FCC investigate? Will local affiliates that stopped airing the show resume? Some, like Nexstar and Sinclair, have said they will continue preempting the show while they evaluate. Now I want to know what you think. Was ABC's decision to suspend Jimmy Kimmel justified, or did they cave to political pressure and fear? Should late-night hosts be able to speak freely even? If it offends summoned, let the audience judge. Leave your thoughts below. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want more breakdowns like this of media fights, free speech stories, and geopolitical pressure on speech, hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to click the bell to get notified when I post next. Kimmel gets suspended, gives calls remarks about Charlie Kirk's assassination narrative, gives regulatory plus political pressure, gives public backlash, gives Disney reverses decision. Remind audience that this moment is an outlier and that outlier moments define what comes next. Final thought. In a world where speech is under growing scrutiny, this fight is bigger than comedy. It's about who controls the narrative. What Kimmel might say on return. Will he apologize? Will he double down on the critique? How toned down will content be? How audience reaction continues? Will Disney Plus see more cancellations? How will viewership respond?